The ballroom was full of people who had never worried about a fever at 2 in the morning, and Lillian Drake was smiling at her ex-husband like she already knew how this ended. Caleb Hayes had a sick child at home, a phone buzzing against his ribs, and a woman in a champagne-colored dress walking toward him through a crowd that parted without knowing why. In 60 seconds, one of them was going to break him in front of everyone. The other was going to make sure he didn't stay broken. If you stay with me until the end of this story, do me a favor. Hit that like button and drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far this one travels. The cufflinks weren't his. Caleb had noticed it in the bathroom mirror upstairs 10 minutes before the gala officially started, while he was splashing cold water on his face and trying to convince himself he looked like he belonged. The cufflinks were small, silver, engraved with a monogram that wasn't his initials. He remembered too late that the tuxedo was a rental, and someone before him had forgotten to take his own jewelry out. Some other man's initials were sitting on Caleb's wrists. Catching the light every time he reached for a glass of water, he wasn't going to drink. It felt about right. He stepped out of the bathroom and into the long hallway that led back to the ballroom, and the music hit him first. A string quartet, something classical, something that cost more per hour than he used to make in a week. Then the voices. Hundreds of them, layered, confident, laughing in that particular way wealthy people laughed when they already knew the punchline. Caleb adjusted his collar and checked his phone again. 3 messages from the sitter. None of them were emergencies yet. One of them said Mia had thrown up around 6:30 and was sleeping now. The second said her forehead felt warm but not scary. The third said, "Go. Have fun. We're okay." He didn't believe her. He never did. Mia was 7 years old, and for the last 2 years her immune system had been an opinion rather than a fact. She caught everything. She caught it harder than other kids did. The pediatrician said it was probably nothing, probably just a phase, probably her body still adjusting after the year they had all lived through. And Caleb had nodded and smiled and then gone home and started keeping a color-coded log of her symptoms in a notebook on top of the refrigerator. Red for fever, blue for stomach, green for cough. He had filled 2 notebooks already. The sitter, Joyce, had raised 3 of her own. She was 61 and didn't panic. If she said Mia was okay, Mia was okay. He repeated that to himself as he pocketed the phone. He didn't want to be here. He had agreed to come as a favor to his boss, who wasn't really his boss anymore. And also because Elena Voss had asked him directly. And when Elena Voss asked you something directly, the word no sort of slid off the side of your brain before you could get your mouth around it. He still wasn't sure what he was doing in her orbit. 3 months ago, he had been a senior analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm that mostly handled municipal contracts, power grids, water authorities, the kind of work where nobody thanked you and nobody noticed until something broke. He was good at it. He had been good at it for a long time. And then one Tuesday, a woman in a navy suit had walked into a conference room where he was presenting a very boring slide deck about infrastructure resilience, and she had sat in the back, and she had not introduced herself, and at the end she had asked exactly one question. If the grid goes down in February, what's the first thing you steal? He remembered laughing. Not because it was funny, because nobody had ever asked a question like that in that room before. Generators, he'd said, but not the big ones. Everyone's watching the big ones. You go for the portable units at the hardware stores in towns under 20,000 people. That's where the cascade starts. She hadn't smiled. She had just written something down. 2 weeks later, she'd offered him a consulting contract that paid more than his salary had, and she had said very plainly, "I want to see what you do when nobody's telling you what to do." That was Elena. He still didn't understand her. He wasn't sure he was supposed to. He turned the corner into the ballroom, and the ceiling was the first thing that hit him. Vaulted glass, chandeliers the size of small cars. The kind of space that was designed to remind you of your own insignificance. The floor was marble. The servers moved in choreographed patterns, and the guests moved in the patterns of people who had never needed to count the money in their wallet before ordering a second drink. Caleb took 1 glass of sparkling water off a passing tray and held it without drinking from it. He recognized maybe a dozen faces. 2 senators, a tech founder who had been on a magazine cover last year, a woman in emerald green who ran the largest hospital system in the state. He did not recognize most of them, but he knew the species. He had spent enough years on the edge of rooms like this one to know how to stand in them without drawing attention. You kept your shoulders relaxed. You kept one hand free. You didn't look like you were waiting for someone because waiting was the tell. He was waiting for someone. He just didn't know who yet. Caleb Hayes. My God. The voice landed between his shoulder blades before he saw her, and he felt his whole spine go stiff for a half second before he made himself turn. Lillian. She was standing 6 feet away in a black dress that was cut like a weapon, her hair pulled back in the sleek low knot she had worn to their wedding. She had not aged in the way normal people aged. She had aged in the way expensive women aged, which was to say that she looked like a slightly sharper version of the woman he had married 9 years ago, and every sharpening had been paid for on purpose. Lillian, I didn't know you were on the list. I didn't know you were either, she smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It never had been, which was something he'd had to learn slowly over a long period of time, in rooms much smaller than this one. I'm on the board, sweetheart. I've been on the board for 2 years. You'd know that if you read the newsletter. I don't read the newsletter. No, you wouldn't. She stepped closer. She smelled the same. That was the part that always knocked something loose in him, even now. The perfume hadn't changed. Everything else had. The car she drove, the last name she used for business, the apartment she lived in, the man she was photographed with at fundraisers. But the perfume was the same, and for one terrible second it was 2018 again, and he was standing in their kitchen asking her not to take the job in Singapore. And she was standing across from him explaining, patiently, the way you explained something to a child, why his fear of losing her wasn't a good enough reason for her to stay. He blinked it away. How's Mia? Lillian asked. She's fine. Is she really? She's 7. She's fine. I heard she's been sick. From who? I have my sources. Your sources are wrong. Lillian tilted her head. She had always done that when she didn't believe him. It was a small thing. 95% of the people who had ever loved Lillian Drake had probably never noticed it. Caleb had lived with it for 6 years. You look tired, Caleb. I am tired. Is that the job? It's the parenting. She laughed, short and clean, like he had said something charming instead of something true. Well, you always did take it so seriously. There it was. He felt the phone buzz again against his ribs, and for one shameful second he hoped it was an emergency, because an emergency was a door, and he wanted a door. Excuse me, he said. I need to check this. Oh, Caleb, don't. Don't what? Don't pretend you have somewhere to be. We both know you don't. She said it lightly. She said everything lightly. That was the trick with Lillian. She never raised her voice. She never said anything cruel that you could catch her on later. She just slid these tiny little blades under your skin and walked away before you realized you were bleeding. He made himself look at her. I have a daughter at home with a fever, Lillian. She has a fever every weekend, from what I hear. Then stop hearing. I'm her mother. You were. It came out before he could catch it, and he watched her face do the thing it did when he surprised her. A flicker, there and gone. A tightening at the corner of the mouth. That was unkind, she said quietly. I know. I'm sorry. You should be. He wasn't actually sorry, but he said it because it was faster than the alternative, and because a server was approaching with a tray of champagne, and because somewhere across the room, a man in a gray suit had just said his name out loud to the woman next to him, and Caleb could feel the attention of the room starting to bend toward them, the way attention always bent toward Lillian, whether she wanted it to or not. Who invited you? She said. Does it matter? It matters to me. Why? Because I know everyone on the invite list, Caleb. I've seen it 3 times, and your name isn't on it. He didn't answer. So someone added you, late, which means someone went out of their way. She let that sit. Who? Does it hurt you that much? It doesn't hurt me at all. Then why are you asking? She smiled again, and this time there was something different in it, something almost sad. He hated that he could still read her. He hated that some tiny, useless part of him still wanted to know what she was thinking. Because I worry about you, Caleb. No, you don't. I do. I worry that you've been standing still for so long you don't even notice the world has moved. I worry that you've convinced yourself that not trying is the same as choosing peace. And I worry that our daughter is going to grow up watching her father settle for a small life and think that's what men do. She said it gently. That was the worst part. He set the sparkling water down on the nearest surface, which turned out to be the edge of a decorative fountain, and some of it spilled, and he didn't care. Lillian. Yes, sweetheart? You don't know anything about my life. I know enough. You know what I told you 6 years ago? That's all you know. You haven't asked a real question about me since 2019, and you haven't asked one about Mia since last Christmas, and the fact that you're standing here right now pretending to be concerned about either of us is... He stopped himself. He could feel his pulse in his throat. It's what? She said. It's theater. Oh, Caleb. It's theater, Lillian, and I'm tired, and I don't want to do it tonight. She looked at him for a long moment. The music behind them had shifted to something slower. Somewhere to his left, a woman laughed too loudly at a joke. Caleb's phone buzzed again, and he didn't look at it, because he couldn't look away from Lillian yet, because looking away first had always been the thing that cost him. You know what your problem is? She said finally. I'm sure you'll tell me. Your problem is that you think dignity is the same as success. It isn't. Dignity is what people perform when they've run out of other options. Wow. I'm trying to help you. You're really not. I am. I'm telling you what nobody else will, because everyone else in your life is kind to you, and kind people lie. I'm not kind. I never was. That's why you married me. I married you because I thought you were brave. I was. You were selfish. Sometimes that's the same thing. He opened his mouth to say something, and then he didn't, because across the room he saw Elena Voss walk through the main doors, and whatever he had been about to say fell out of his head and disappeared. Elena was wearing a dress the color of champagne, but not the good kind. The kind that was slightly off, slightly warmer, a little closer to honey. Her hair was down. He had never seen her with her hair down. At work, it was always pulled back, always clipped at the nape of her neck in that precise way she did things. The way some people tied their shoes the same way every morning for 40 years. Her hair was dark, and it fell to just below her shoulders, and she wasn't looking at the room. She was looking at the room the way a surgeon looked at an X-ray, mapping it. Her eyes found him in about 4 seconds. They didn't change expression. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just saw him, registered Lillian next to him, and began to walk. She was 28 years old. He had looked it up once, early on, the way you look up someone who is going to have power over your life. 28, a master's from somewhere he didn't recognize, a short stint at a bank nobody talked about, and then 3 years of acquisitions so aggressive that 2 trade publications had named her the most disciplined knife in the drawer. He had laughed at that the first time he read it, because it was the kind of thing only a man would write about a woman, and because it was also, unfortunately, accurate. She crossed the ballroom in a straight line. People parted for her without seeming to realize they were parting for her, and that, more than anything else, was what Caleb noticed. Lillian could command a room by walking into it. Elena moved through a room like the room had already agreed to let her pass. Caleb? Elena said, stopping at his elbow. Elena. I see you've met our board chair. Lillian's face changed. Just a fraction, just enough. You're with Voss Holdings? Lillian said, and her voice did the thing it did when she was recalibrating. It went half a step softer. It got more careful. I am, Elena said. I didn't realize. No, I wouldn't expect you to. Elena didn't look at Lillian when she said it. She was looking at Caleb, and her hand came up and rested very briefly on his forearm. Just a touch, just long enough to register as deliberate, and then dropped again. There's someone I need to introduce him to, Elena said. Would you excuse us? Of course, Lillian said. She didn't mean of course. Elena was already turning. Caleb followed. They didn't speak for the first 20 feet. Elena guided him with the lightest possible pressure at his elbow, the kind of touch that wasn't really a touch, and she walked him past 3 clusters of important people and then through a side door into a smaller room, some kind of private salon, empty, lit only by one lamp and the ambient glow from the ballroom behind them. She closed the door. She exhaled. You okay? She said. Yeah. Liar. Yeah. She smiled. A real one this time. A small one. How long was she at you? 4 minutes, maybe 5. That's a long time. I've had longer. I'm sure you have. She leaned against the wall next to the door and crossed her arms. She looked tired, he noticed. Not tired the way he was tired. She looked tired the way people looked when they had been carrying something heavy for a while and didn't get to put it down often. Why is she on the board? Caleb asked. She's not. She said she was. She's on a board. Not the board. She sits on the foundation's advisory committee, which is a polite way of saying she gives them money and they give her a nameplate. She has nothing to do with the operational side. She said she'd seen the invite list 3 times. She probably has. She's thorough. She wanted to know who added my name. I added your name. I figured. Is that a problem? No? She studied him. He hated being studied by her. He also, at some low and dishonest level, didn't hate it at all. Caleb? Yeah. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me like an adult and not like a man who's trying to be polite. Okay. How sick is your daughter? He stopped. He looked at the floor and then at the wall behind her head and then at his own hands. There was a small scratch on the back of his left hand. He couldn't remember where he had gotten it, probably from one of Mia's plastic dinosaurs. She had started leaving them on the kitchen counter because she said the counter was their mountain, and the couch was the valley, and the floor was the ocean, and the dinosaurs had to travel between them at specific times based on a weather system she had invented. She's okay tonight, he said. Tonight? Yeah. And tomorrow? I don't know. And next week? I don't know. Elena nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay, what? Okay. I'm going to stop dragging you to these. You don't have to. I know I don't. I'm going to anyway. Elena. Caleb. You brought me here for a reason. I brought you here because I thought you needed to be seen. I was wrong about that. Or I was half wrong. I don't know yet. That's a weird thing to say. I know. She looked past him, toward the closed door, and for a moment he thought she was about to say something else. Something larger. And then her face smoothed out again, and she was back to being the woman who walked through rooms like they had agreed to let her pass. Stay for another 40 minutes, she said. Then leave. Go home, I'll handle the rest. What's the rest? Don't worry about it. Elena. Caleb. She pushed off the wall. She opened the door. The noise of the ballroom flooded back in. The quartet, the laughter, the crystal. 40 minutes, she said again, and then she stepped back into the light. And she was Elena Voss again, and he was the man at her elbow, and nobody in the room except Lillian Drake had any idea what had just happened. He followed her out. He lasted 32 minutes. He shook hands with a congressman whose name he immediately forgot. He had a short, unpleasant conversation with a hedge fund manager who kept looking over his shoulder for someone more important. He stood near a window for a while and watched a woman in her 60s teach a waiter how to hold a tray. He drank half a glass of water. He did not eat. At the 32-minute mark, his phone buzzed, and this time he looked. Caleb. She spiked to 103. I think we should go in. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't find Elena. He didn't find Lillian. He didn't thank the host. He turned around and walked, fast but not running, through the ballroom, past the coat check, out the front doors and into the cold. The valet saw his face and didn't ask questions. His car came up in under 2 minutes. He drove. The hospital was 23 minutes from the venue on a normal night, and he made it in 17, and for 14 of those 17 minutes his hands were shaking on the wheel, in the particular way they shook when he was alone in a car and didn't have to pretend to anyone that he was fine. He kept seeing her. Mia, 3 years old at the lake cabin, afraid of the sound the loons made. 5 years old the day Lillian had come back to get the last of her things, watching from the top of the stairs without making a sound. 6 years old, holding his hand in the parking lot of the pediatric clinic, telling him very seriously that she had decided she didn't want to be a doctor anymore. She wanted to be a person who made the doctors laugh, because the doctors looked sad. She had always watched people. She had always seen them. He pulled into the emergency room drop-off and left the car running and ran inside. She was fine. She was fine in the way small children were fine, which was to say that by the time he got there, the fever had already started to come down, and she was curled on a blue plastic chair next to Joyce with her cheek on Joyce's arm, and Joyce was reading her a pamphlet about hand washing in the absence of any other reading material, and Mia was listening with the patient, skeptical expression of a tiny auditor. "Daddy," she said. "Hi, sweetheart." "You smell like a party." "I was at a party." "Was it fun?" "No." She considered this. "Next time, don't go." He sat down next to her and put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, and he looked at Joyce over the top of her head, and Joyce shrugged in the way she did. The small shrug that meant she scared me, but she's okay. And I'd rather be wrong in here than right and at home. He mouthed, "Thank you." Joyce mouthed, "Go to sleep." A nurse came by and said the doctor would be in when he could, probably another half hour, maybe 40 minutes. Caleb said that was fine. He meant it. He would have sat in that chair for 6 hours. He would have sat in that chair forever. It was the only chair in the world where he knew exactly what he was supposed to be doing. His phone buzzed. He thought it would be Joyce's daughter checking in. He thought it would be the sitter's husband offering to drive her home. He thought it might be Lillian, because Lillian always found out these things and always called at the wrong time with the wrong tone. It wasn't. It was a text from a number he knew. "You make it out okay?" E. He stared at it for a long time. Mia had fallen asleep against his shoulder. Joyce had closed her eyes in the chair across from them, the pamphlet still open on her lap. Somewhere down the hall a child was crying, and somewhere closer a vending machine was humming. And the overhead lights were the flat, ugly white that hospital lights always were. And Caleb Hayes sat in a plastic chair in an emergency room with his daughter sleeping on his shoulder and his phone in his left hand, and he thought about the woman in the champagne-colored dress who had asked him exactly one question 3 months ago in a conference room, and he thought about the way she had touched his arm in front of his ex-wife, and he thought about what she had said. "I brought you here because I thought you needed to be seen. I was wrong about that. Or I was half wrong." He typed back with one thumb. "She's okay. I'm at the hospital. Thank you for tonight." He hit send. The reply came back in under a minute. "Go be with her. We'll talk on Monday." He set the phone face down on his knee. Mia made a small sound in her sleep and turned her face into his jacket, and he held still so he wouldn't wake her. And somewhere in the part of his brain that was still running on the gala and the marble floors and Lillian's sharp, careful voice, a door quietly opened that he had not known was there. He didn't walk through it yet. He just noticed it. And he sat in the plastic chair in the white light, and he waited for the doctor, and he did not let himself think about Monday. Not yet. The doctor came in at 11:12, a tired man in his 50s with kind eyes and the careful walk of someone who had been on his feet for 16 hours. He listened to Mia's chest, checked her temperature again, asked Caleb 3 questions about what she had eaten and 2 about what she had drunk, and then he said the thing Caleb had been waiting to hear. "She's fine. She's spiked. She's coming down. Her lungs are clear. Sometimes kids just do this. I know it doesn't feel like a good answer." "It isn't a good answer." "No, it isn't." The doctor smiled, the small professional smile of a man who had told 100 other fathers some version of the same thing. "Go home. Fluids, Tylenol if she spikes again. If she spikes past 104, or she gets lethargic, or she stops drinking, come back. Otherwise, let her sleep." "Okay. You look tired, Mr. Hayes." "I am tired." "Is there someone who helps you?" Caleb looked down at his daughter, still asleep against his shoulder, her hand curled into the lapel of the rented tuxedo jacket that was not his, with another man's cufflinks still catching the hospital light. "There's Joyce," he said. "That's good." "Yeah." "Go home, Mr. Hayes." They were out the automatic doors by 11:30. Joyce insisted on taking a cab. He tried to argue with her, and she waved him off in the way she waved everything off, which was the way a woman who had raised 3 sons waved off the opinions of all the men in her general vicinity. He watched her get into the cab. He watched the cab pull away. Then he buckled Mia into the back seat, and he stood for a second in the cold parking lot with the driver's side door open, breathing, and he let himself shake for about 10 seconds before he got in and drove them home. She woke up once on the drive, somewhere on the bridge, and she said very clearly, "Daddy, did the doctor laugh?" "No, sweetheart." "Did you make him?" "I didn't try tonight." "Try next time." She was asleep again before he got off the bridge. He carried her up the stairs to the apartment, her legs long against his hip the way they hadn't been 2 years ago, And he thought about how much heavier she was getting and how he had not noticed it happening. And he put her in her bed in the clothes she was wearing because he wasn't going to wake her up to change her. And he sat on the edge of her bed for a while and listened to her breathe, because sometimes that was the only thing in the world that made sense. Then he went to the kitchen and he made himself a sandwich he didn't eat, and he sat at the table in the dark with his phone face down in front of him. And he did not pick it up, and he did not text Elena, not check it, and he did not text Elena back, and he did not text Lillian, and he did not do anything. And eventually the clock above the stove said 1:43, and he stood up and he went to bed. He did not sleep well. The Elena Voss that Caleb met on Monday morning was not the Elena Voss he had met in the ballroom. He arrived at the Voss Holdings offices at 7:52, 8 minutes before his meeting, which was how he always arrived anywhere, close enough to not look nervous, early enough to not be late. The building was in the old garment district, in a converted warehouse that had been stripped down to its brick and its iron and then polished to a shine. The lobby smelled like cedar and coffee. The receptionist knew his name without asking. He had been coming here for 3 months, and he still wasn't used to being known by sight in a building he did not work in. "She's in her office, Mr. Hayes. She said to go back." "Thank you." He walked the long hallway to the corner office. The door was open. Elena was standing at her window with her back to him, and she was on the phone, and she was speaking in a language he did not recognize, low and fast and slightly annoyed. When she heard him at the door, she held up one finger without turning around. He waited. She finished the call. She set the phone down on the desk. She turned. Monday morning, Elena was in black. Black trousers, black sweater, black flats, her hair pulled back the way he was used to it. No trace of the woman in the champagne-colored dress. She looked at him for a long second, and then she said, "Sit." He sat. "How is she?" "She's better. Back at school this morning." "Good. Thank you for asking." "Don't thank me for that." She walked around to her side of the desk and sat, and she opened a folder, and she slid it across to him, and she said, "I'm giving you something to break." He looked at the folder. "I'm sorry? There's a company in here, a logistics operation, regional, 212 million in annual revenue, profitable on paper, owned by a family trust that wants out. 3 parties are bidding for it. One of them is us. I think the numbers are wrong. I think the numbers have been wrong for about 18 months and nobody has caught it. I want you to tell me if I'm right." "Why me?" "Because everyone else on my team already has an opinion." "What's your opinion?" "That if I'm right, we don't buy it. And that if I'm wrong, I need to know why I thought I was right. Because I don't like being confused about my own instincts." "How long do I have?" 9 days. "Okay." "Caleb?" "Yeah." "Last Friday was a mistake." He looked up. "I shouldn't have put you in that room," she said. "I thought it would help. I thought if he's going to do the work, he should see what the work pays for, and that was a stupid reason. You're not the kind of person who needs to see a ballroom to understand why the ballroom exists. So I apologize. It won't happen again." "Okay. That's all I wanted to say?" "Okay." She looked at him. He looked at her. There was something in the room that neither of them was addressing, and both of them knew they weren't addressing it, and neither of them moved to address it because they were both professionals, and because professionals were people who had learned, over time, to walk around certain things without ever looking directly at them. 9 days, she said again. 9 days. He took the folder. He worked on the folder in the evenings, at the kitchen table, after Mia was asleep. The folder was 240 pages. The numbers were dense. The footnotes were denser. On the second night, he printed out the balance sheets and laid them across the living room floor in the order he wanted them in. And Mia came out of her room at 11, looking for water, and stepped carefully around the paper on her way to the kitchen, like the paper was a sleeping animal she didn't want to wake. "What is it?" she whispered. "It's work, sweetheart." "Is it a puzzle?" "Kind of." "Are you winning?" "I don't know yet." She nodded seriously and took her water and went back to bed. On the third night, he found it. It was in the depreciation schedule, buried in a footnote that referenced an appendix that referenced a different footnote in a different section, and once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. The company owned a fleet of 28 trucks. The depreciation had been calculated on a 7-year schedule, but the invoices in the appendix showed that 19 of the trucks had been purchased used from an auction in the southeast, and the previous owner had already depreciated them for 4 years. The company's books were showing them as assets with 3 years of value left. The auction records showed they were closer to the end of their useful life than the middle. It was not a catastrophic error. It was a $2 million error in a $212 million company. On its own, it was a footnote. But it meant the person doing the books either hadn't read the appendix, or had read it and decided it didn't matter, or had read it and decided to hope nobody else read it. And once Caleb started looking for the same pattern in other places, he found 2 more. A lease that had been capitalized when it should have been expensed. A warranty reserve that was sitting at 12% when the industry average was 21%. None of them individually were fatal. Together, they meant the company was less profitable than the statement said. Not by a lot. By maybe 9%. But 9% of $212 million was real money, and it was the kind of money that, if you didn't know it was missing, you would overpay for. He wrote it up on a Tuesday. He sent it to Elena at 10:14 that night. She called him at 10:16. I want you in my office at 7 tomorrow morning. 7. Yes. Okay. She hung up. He sat at the kitchen table with his phone in his hand for a minute, and then he got up and he checked on Mia, and she was asleep with her arm thrown over the small stuffed fox she had been sleeping with since she was 4, and he stood in her doorway for a minute, and then he went to bed, and this time he slept. 7 in the morning at Voss Holdings was a different building. The lobby was almost empty. The receptionist wasn't at her desk yet. The coffee wasn't made. Elena was already in her office, already in black, already at her desk, already reading something on a tablet with that particular focus of hers that made her look, for a second, like a woman who had forgotten that other people existed. She looked up when he came in. Sit. He sat. I read it twice. And? You're right. And you're right about the warranty reserve, which is the one I care about, because that means the operating margins have been shaved for at least 6 quarters, and nobody on the other side is going to tell us that. They probably don't even know. You think it's fraud? No, I think it's laziness. Fraud requires attention. This is what happens when nobody's paying attention. Okay? We're pulling out of the bid. Okay. I want you to write the memo explaining why. Me? You. I'm a consultant. You're a consultant who just saved me $19 million. I want your name on the memo. Elena. What? I'm going to say something. Say it. You have 4 analysts in this building who have been here longer than 3 months. Any of them could have written this memo. Any of them would have loved to write this memo. If my name goes on the memo instead of theirs, I make 4 enemies before lunch. She looked at him for a long second. Then she smiled, small, tight, almost pleased. Fine, she said. Fine? Fine. Put one of their names on it. Pick whoever you like. I'll know. Okay. But Caleb. Yeah. You're not a consultant anymore. He sat very still. What does that mean? It means I'm offering you a job. Elena. Not today. I know you're not going to say yes today. I'm telling you so you can think about it. Director level, reporting to me. You'd build your own team. You'd set your own hours within reason. You'd have to be in this office 2 or 3 days a week, no more, and the rest you can do from wherever you want. The salary is in the folder I'm going to email you at noon. The bonus structure is in the folder. The equity is in the folder. Read it. Don't answer me this week. Don't answer me next week. Answer me when you know. Why are you doing this? Because you're good at this, and good is rare, and I don't like watching rare things walk back out of the room. That's not the whole reason. She paused. She set the tablet down. She folded her hands on the desk. No, she said. It isn't. What's the rest? The rest is my problem, not yours. Elena, Caleb. You have a daughter at home who is 7 years old and who, from what I understand, has been sick more than she's been well this year. You also have an ex-wife who runs a $50 million fund and who, on Friday night, in a ballroom full of people who are very quick to smell weakness, tried to make you feel like a failure in public. I have watched you for 3 months. I have read every report you have turned in. I have listened to you in meetings with people who have tried very hard to impress you and not succeeded. I have an instinct about you, and my instincts are not usually wrong, and I am making you an offer because if I do not make you an offer, someone else will, and that will be worse for me than the alternative. That is the rest of the reason.
The part I am keeping to myself is the part that is my problem, not yours. And I would appreciate it if you did not ask me about it again.
He didn't. He nodded, once. He picked up the folder. He stood. He walked to the door. Caleb? He turned. How's your daughter this week? She's okay. Good. He left. It took 6 days for the news of what he had found to move through the building, and he watched it move the way you watched weather move across a lake. You couldn't see it directly, but you could see how people changed when it arrived on their side of the water. On Monday, the analyst whose name was on the memo nodded at him in the elevator. On Tuesday, 2 people from the M&A team asked him to lunch, and he went, and they were polite and a little too friendly and asked him 3 times how long he had worked with Elena. On Wednesday, a man named Greg Matheson, who ran operations and who had a big laugh and small eyes, cornered him in the coffee area. Hayes, where'd you go to school? State? Mid-tier. You wouldn't have heard of it. Try me. Fenwick. Never heard of it. Told you. Greg laughed. Too hard, the way he laughed at everything. He had the permanent tan of a man who took vacations in places where the tan was part of the vacation, and he wore his collar open 1 button further than the other men in the building, which was, Caleb had decided, a kind of flag. A flag of something. He hadn't figured out what yet. So, Greg said, how'd you catch the truck thing? I read the appendix. Nobody reads the appendix. I did. Why? Because if the answer's not in the body, it's in the appendix. Usually. Greg nodded slowly. He didn't smile anymore. You're consulting? For now. Elena bring you in? Yeah. From where? A firm that does municipal work. You wouldn't have heard of it. Try me. Lindholm and Pace. Never heard of it. Told you. Greg looked at him for a beat longer than was friendly. Well, he said finally, welcome. Don't get too comfortable. He walked off. Caleb watched him go. Then he made his coffee, and he went back to his borrowed desk, and he did not think about Greg Matheson for the rest of the afternoon. But he remembered him, and he filed him. And later that night, at home, at the kitchen table, after Mia was asleep, he wrote Greg's name down on a piece of paper with 2 question marks next to it, and he put the paper in the drawer where he kept the other pieces of paper he didn't throw away. On Thursday, Lillian called. He let it go to voicemail. She called again. He let it go to voicemail again. She called a 3rd time, and he picked up because the 3rd call from Lillian always meant something was actually wrong. Caleb? Lillian. Is Mia with you? She's at school. Is she well? She's okay this week. Why? I want to see her on Saturday. He did not answer right away. Saturdays had been a moving target for years. The custody agreement said every other weekend. The reality was that Lillian took the weekend she wanted and skipped the ones she didn't, and Mia had stopped asking about it when she was 5, which was, in Caleb's private opinion, the worst possible outcome. Not the broken promises, but the learned silence. Lillian. I know. No, you don't. I do, Caleb. I know. I missed Labor Day. I missed her Halloween thing. I know. Why now? Because I want to see my daughter. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. He stood at the window of his apartment. The street below was quiet. A man was walking a dog that was too big for him. A woman in her 30s was struggling with a stroller and a bag of groceries, and nobody was helping her. Caleb wanted to go downstairs and help her. He didn't. He stayed on the phone. What time Saturday? Whenever works for you. 10. 10. Don't take her anywhere loud. I won't. Don't take her to the office. I wouldn't. Don't let her cousin feed her candy. He's 6. I don't care. Caleb. What? I saw you at the gala. I know. You cornered me. I saw you leave. My daughter was at the hospital. I know. Mia's sitter called me after you left. She said it wasn't bad. She called you? She has my number. Since when? Since always. I gave it to her the week I moved out. Lillian. What? You don't get to... He stopped himself. I know, she said. I know what you were about to say.
And you're right. I didn't ask you.
I should have asked you. I'm sorry. Are you? I am, actually. He was quiet. Saturday, she said. 10. 10. Caleb. What? The woman in the champagne dress. Don't. I'm not going to Don't. Okay. She hung up. He stood at the window for a long time. On Friday, Elena called him into her office at 4 in the afternoon. Close the door. He closed it. I need your help with something, and it's not about the job offer. Okay? Sit. He sat. The truck thing traveled, she said. I figured. Greg Matheson came to see me yesterday. I figured that too. He wants to know who you are. What did you tell him? I told him you were a consultant I trusted. Is that all? That's all he needed. Okay. She tapped a pen against the desk. Caleb, I want to ask you something, and I want you to understand that I am asking you as your current employer and nothing else. Okay? Are you interested in corporate politics? No. Good answer. Wrong answer, but good answer. What's the right answer? The right answer is no, but I'll learn if you need me to, because I need you to. Why? She put the pen down. Because Greg Matheson has been quietly building a case against me for about 4 months. He is not subtle. He is also not stupid. He is the operations director, and he has the ear of 2 of my board members. And he believes, incorrectly but fervently, that I am running the firm in a way that is, quote, too cautious, end quote. By which he means I am not doing the deals he wants to do. By which he means I am not giving him the deals he wants to own. The truck memo you wrote last week is going to be used against me because the other 2 bidders did not pull out. And if one of them acquires the company and it does well in the short term, Greg is going to walk into a board meeting in March and explain that I cost the firm a good deal because I was too timid, even if the company underperforms in the long term. Even then, because by the long term, Greg will either have my job or have left for a better one. Okay. I am telling you this because you are going to get pulled into it. You already are. He came looking for you in the coffee room yesterday. I know. I know you know. Okay, here's what I am not going to do. I am not going to ask you to pick a side. You don't work for me yet. Even if you did, it wouldn't be fair. Here's what I'm going to ask. If anyone in this building asks you a question about that memo, or about me, or about how I run my team, I want you to tell them exactly what you actually think. Not what's flattering to me, not what's careful. The truth, whatever it is. Why? Because you are not the kind of person who lies well. And if you try to protect me, you will sound like you're lying, and that will hurt me more than the truth ever could. He looked at her. You don't know me that well, he said. I know enough. That's what Lillian said at the gala. I'm not Lillian. No, you aren't. Caleb? Yeah. Are you going to take the job? I don't know. When will you know? I don't know that either. Okay? Elena. What? Why did you pick me? Really? The truck memo was good, but it wasn't miraculous. Anyone on your team could have caught it if they had bothered to read the appendix. She was quiet for a moment. 3 months ago, she said, you gave a presentation in a conference room at Lindholm and Pace about municipal grid resilience. It was a bad presentation. The slides were ugly, and you ran over by 6 minutes, and you apologized twice for things you didn't need to apologize for. But in the middle of it, you said something. You said, systems fail in the direction of the people who are already tired. And I wrote that down, and I went back to my office, and I thought about it for 3 days. And then I came back and I offered you a contract. That's it. That's it. That's a sentence. That's not a reason. It's a reason. You just don't know it yet. He didn't answer. Go home, she said. It's Friday. You have a daughter. He went. Saturday morning at 9:46, Lillian rang the buzzer. Mia had been up since 6. She had put on 3 different outfits and taken 2 of them off and ended up in the dress her grandmother had sent for her birthday, which was corduroy and had ducks on it, and was, in Caleb's opinion, a little too warm for the weather, but was the dress she had chosen, and he had learned a long time ago not to argue with her about dresses. Is Mommy coming up? I think she's coming up.
I want her to come up. Okay. I don't want her to come up. Okay. I don't know. It's okay to not know, sweetheart. She chewed on the inside of her cheek, which was a thing she had been doing since she was 4. Lillian did it too. Caleb had never pointed it out to either of them. Daddy? Yeah. If I don't want to go, can I not go? You can always not go. Okay. She thought about it. I'll go, she said. Okay. The buzzer rang again, and then there was a knock at the door, and Mia walked to the door and stood in front of it for a moment like she was bracing for weather. Then she opened it. Lillian was in jeans and a cashmere sweater, which was Lillian's version of dressing down. Her hair was loose. She was holding a small white paper bag that almost certainly contained a pastry from the bakery Mia liked, and her face, when she saw her daughter, did the thing Caleb had almost forgotten it could do. It softened, just for a second, just for a breath. Hi, Bug. Hi, Mom. Is that the duck dress? Yeah. It's my favorite. I know. Lillian knelt. It was an awkward kneel, the knee cracking, a grown woman in expensive jeans on the scuffed hallway floor of her ex-husband's apartment, and she looked up at her daughter and she said, very simply, I missed you. Mia looked at her. Okay, Mia said. Lillian stood. We're going to get pancakes, she told Mia, and then we're going to the bookstore, and then I'm going to bring you home by 3 because your dad said so. Okay? Lillian looked up at Caleb. Her eyes did not soften. They never did. With him. 3, she said. 3. Thank you. You don't have to thank me for it. I know, I'm doing it anyway. They looked at each other for a second too long. Then Mia took her mother's hand, and the two of them went down the hall toward the elevator, and Caleb stood in the doorway and watched them go. And when the elevator doors closed, he went inside and he closed his own door, and he leaned against it for a minute with his eyes shut. And then he went to the kitchen and he made a cup of coffee he didn't want. At 11, his phone buzzed. It was Elena. Are you free this afternoon? Not work, just asking. He looked at the phone for a long time, then he typed back. Mia is with her mother until 3. After that, I have her. The reply came fast. Can I bring you coffee at noon? 20 minutes, that's all. He hesitated. He typed, Where? She sent him the name of a place. It was 6 blocks from his apartment. He hadn't told her where he lived. She had known for months. He didn't write back to ask her how. He just wrote, okay. The coffee place was the kind of place Elena Voss did not belong in. It had mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu, and a man behind the counter who had a tattoo of a crow on his neck and who did not smile at anyone, on principle. She was already there when he walked in. Jeans, a gray sweater, a wool coat folded over the back of the chair next to her. Her hair was down. Twice now, he thought. That's twice now. She had 2 coffees on the table. I got you a regular, she said. I assumed. That's fine. He sat. She looked different in daylight, not softer exactly, just less armored. She had a small scar on her chin that he hadn't noticed before, a thin white line, maybe an inch long. She caught him looking. 10 years old. Bike. Curb. The curb won. It looks like it won. It did. He smiled a little. She smiled a little. Neither of them was good at this, and they both knew it. Why are we here? He said. Because I have a thing I want to tell you, and I didn't want to tell you in the office. Okay? Greg made a move yesterday afternoon after you left. What kind of move? He requested all consulting agreements from the last 6 months, formal request, through legal. He's framing it as a compliance audit. Mine's in there. Yours is in there. Okay, it's not a problem. The contract is clean. You've never been paid a cent that wasn't itemized. But he's going to use it as a way to bring your name up in front of the board in March. He's going to say, I'm bringing in outside people to do work my own team should be doing. He's going to say it's evidence of, quote, judgment problems, end quote. Is he going to win? I don't know. What do you need from me? She looked at him. Nothing, she said. Elena, I mean it. Nothing. I'm not going to use you. I brought you coffee on a Saturday because I wanted to tell you what was happening before you heard it from someone else. That's the whole reason I'm here. Okay? If you want to walk away from the offer, now is the right time. It's not going to get easier. If anything, it's going to get worse before March.
Greg is not going to stop. He's going to try to pull you in. He's going to offer you something. I don't know what yet, but he will.
Okay, I wanted you to know. Okay. She picked up her coffee. She drank. She set it down. How was Mia this morning? She was nervous, but she went. With Lillian. Yeah. Good. Why good? Because the kid needs a mother even if the mother is not very good at the job. And because watching a kid decide for herself to give a second chance to someone who doesn't deserve it is about the best thing there is. He looked at her. That's a specific opinion, he said.
It's a specific opinion.
From experience. From experience. She did not elaborate. He did not push.
They drank their coffee. They did not talk for about a minute. A man came in with a small gray dog. The dog sat at his feet and stared at the crow tattoo on the barista's neck, like the tattoo was something it was considering fighting. Elena watched the dog. She smiled. I like this place, she said. You've been here before. Twice. When? Once in September. Once 2 weeks ago.
Why? Because I walk sometimes when I can't sleep, and this is on the walk. Elena. What? The part you said was your problem and not mine. At the office, the day you offered me the job. Yeah. Is it still your problem and not mine? She looked at her coffee. Yes, she said. For now. Okay. Caleb. Yeah.
I'm not Lillian. I want to say that once, out loud, to you. And then I'm not going to say it again. I am not her. I don't do what she does. I don't corner people. I don't weaponize concern. If I tell you something is my problem and not yours, I mean it. And I am not going to come back in 3 months and tell you it was your problem the whole time and you should have known. I'm not going to do that to you. Okay. Okay. She finished her coffee. She stood. She put on the wool coat. Go home, she said. Your kid is going to be back at 3, and you should be there when she walks in the door. Yeah. I'll see you Monday. Yeah. She paid at the counter. She did not look back. The door swung shut behind her, and the bell above the door made a small, flat sound, and the man with the gray dog glanced up, and then back down at his newspaper. Caleb stayed in the chair for another 10 minutes. He did not finish his coffee. He thought about the sentence Elena had quoted back to him, the sentence he had not remembered saying until she said it. Systems fail in the direction of the people who are already tired. And he thought about Greg Matheson's flag of something open collar, and he thought about Lillian kneeling on the hallway floor, and he thought about Mia deciding, for reasons only she understood, to go get pancakes with the woman who had left her when she was 2. He walked home. At 3 o'clock exactly, the buzzer rang. Mia came in smelling like maple syrup and holding a paper bag with 3 books in it, and she was tired in the particular way children were tired when they had spent 4 hours performing the version of themselves they thought someone wanted to see. And she put the books on the kitchen counter, and she climbed onto the couch, and she said, without looking at him, Daddy, can I just watch something? Yeah, Bug. The loud one with the fish. Okay. He put the movie on. She curled against his side. After about 20 minutes, she was asleep, and he sat with her weight against his ribs and his phone face down on the arm of the couch, and he did not pick it up, and he watched the cartoon fish argue about coral for the rest of the afternoon. He didn't text Elena that night. He didn't text anyone. On Monday morning at 7:52, he walked into the Voss Holdings lobby, and the receptionist smiled at him, and Greg Matheson was standing by the elevator bank waiting for him with a cup of coffee in each hand, and Greg held one of them out, and he smiled the big smile. And the small eyes did not smile with the rest of him. And he said, Caleb, you got 5 minutes? I want to show you something. Caleb took the coffee. He did not drink it. He followed Greg Matheson to the elevator, and the doors closed, and the car started to go up. The elevator went up to the 18th floor, which was 2 floors above Elena's office, and Caleb had not been up there before. Greg stood next to him with his own coffee in both hands, rocking very slightly on his heels, the way men did when they were about to say something they had been rehearsing. You ever see The View from 18? No. It's something. I bet. Elena never brings her people up here. She thinks it's ostentatious. She's not wrong. But sometimes ostentatious is the point. The doors opened onto a floor that was mostly empty, a long corridor, gray carpet, a few closed office doors. At the end of the hall, a conference room with a wall of glass and a view of the river. Greg walked him down to it. He did not open the door. He stood in front of the glass and he looked out and he took a long pull from his coffee, and Caleb stood next to him and he did not drink from his. I want to tell you something, Hayes. Okay. I don't have anything against Elena. Okay. People are going to tell you I do, because I've been pushing on her lately. That's going to look like I have something against her. I don't. I think she's smart. I think she's disciplined. I think 5 years from now she's going to be running something much bigger than this. My problem isn't with her, it's with the firm. Okay. You want to know what my problem with the firm is? Not really. Greg laughed. The big laugh, the small eyes. Fair enough. He didn't stop, though. My problem with the firm is that we're losing, quietly. The numbers look fine, we're profitable, board is happy. But if you know the industry, you can see it. The good deals aren't coming to us anymore. They're going to the firms that are willing to move. Elena is cautious. Cautious is fine in a market that rewards caution. We are not in that market. We have not been in that market for 2 years. And the longer she runs this place the way she's running it, the further behind we get. You told her this 3 times. And she heard me. But she doesn't agree. So you're going around her. Greg tilted his head, considered the question, took another sip. I'm not going around her, Hayes. I'm building a record. There's a difference. Going around her is when I close a deal she doesn't know about. Building a record is when, in March, I walk into a room and I have numbers that say this is the cost of caution. She'll have her own numbers. The board will decide. That's how it works. Okay. You don't agree. I didn't say anything. Your face said it. Then my face is wrong. Greg laughed again. Hayes, I like you. I think you have something. I want to know what you are. I'm a consultant. You're a consultant who found a hole in a deal that everyone else in this building missed. I read the appendix. Stop saying that. It's the truth. The truth is that Elena put you on that file because she didn't trust anyone else in this building to tell her what she wanted to hear. The truth is that you told her what she wanted to hear, and now she's offering you a director-level role, and the rest of us who have been here for 4, 6, 8 years are supposed to smile about it. The truth is that you've been in her office twice this week, and nobody else on her team has been in there once. I'm not blind, Hayes. None of us are. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, that's your read. It's wrong, but it's your read. How is it wrong? She didn't put me on that file because she wanted a particular answer. She put me on it because she wanted an answer. If I'd come back and said the numbers were clean, she would have bid. I didn't, so she didn't. That's not what a person does when they're manufacturing cover. That's what a person does when they're actually listening. Greg considered that. You believe that. I do. Because you want to. Maybe. Or because it's true. Those aren't mutually exclusive. No, they're not. He turned from the window. Let me ask you a simple question, Hayes. Off the record. Between us. Between us is a lie. There's no such thing. Fine. Then on the record. I don't care. Here's the question. If I offered you director level at half the salary Elena is offering you, but with my team and with real deals, acquisitions, big ones, the kind that put your name in the trade press, would you take it? No. Why not? Because you asked me in front of a window. Greg stared at him. What does that mean? It means you took me up to the 18th floor on a Monday morning and you walked me to a conference room with a view of the river. And you gave me a speech about the cost of caution and you offered me a job before I'd finished my coffee. It means you're doing theater. And if you're doing theater with me, in a hallway, on a Monday, you're probably doing theater with the people who actually matter to you on days that actually matter. And I don't want to work for someone who does theater on Mondays. Greg didn't laugh this time. He didn't smile at all. You're making an enemy, Hayes. I'm making a decision. Same thing, from where I'm standing. Maybe. Greg took a long pull from his coffee. He looked at the river. He looked at Caleb. Go back to your desk, he said, and think about this conversation. And then come find me on Wednesday and tell me you didn't mean it, and we'll forget it happened. I won't find you on Wednesday. Suit yourself. Caleb walked back to the elevator. The doors opened immediately, like they had been waiting for him. He rode down to 14. He walked to his desk. He sat down. He set the untouched coffee on the corner of the desk, where it would remain, cold, for the next 6 hours. Because he did not trust anything Greg Matheson had handed him, and he was not going to put any part of it inside his body. He did not tell Elena about the conversation. Not that day. Not that week. He filed it, the way he had filed Greg's name in the drawer at home. Because Elena had said something to him at the coffee place on Saturday, and he had turned it over in his head on the walk back and again when Mia fell asleep against his ribs watching the cartoon fish, and it had settled into him as something close to a principle. "I'm not going to use you," she had said. "I'm not going to come back in 3 months and tell you it was your problem the whole time." And the corresponding principle, the one he worked out for himself on the walk home, was this: if Elena was not going to use him, then he was going to have to figure out which fights were his, and he was going to have to fight them without running to her, because the minute he started running to her with every skirmish, he stopped being useful to her and started being another weight she had to carry. He did not want to be a weight. He had spent 6 years being the weight that somebody else had set down and walked away from. He was not going to be it again. So he filed Greg, and he went to work. The weeks that followed were the quiet part of a war. Nothing dramatic happened. That was the thing Caleb kept noticing, the way nothing dramatic happened, and the way it was somehow worse than drama. He came in at his normal time. He sat at his borrowed desk. He was given 3 more files to look at, and he looked at them, and he wrote up what he found, and he put other people's names on the memos, just like Elena had said he could. The analysts on her team stopped being careful around him. 2 of them started eating lunch at his desk. One of them, a woman named Priya, who had been at Voss for 4 years and who had the kind of tired, funny face that you trusted on sight, started telling him things without being asked. Not secrets, just context. Who had slept with whom? Who had quit and come back? Which managing director could be trusted with bad news and which one had to be managed around? "You're compiling a map," Caleb said to her one afternoon. "Of what?" "Of the building." "I am not." "You are. You've been compiling it for 4 years and you just haven't given it to anyone yet." Priya looked at him over her salad. "Maybe I'm just being friendly." "Maybe. You don't believe me." "I don't believe anybody on the 14th floor is just being friendly." "That's fair." "Why me?" She thought about it. "Because you're the only person in this building who hasn't asked me for anything." "That's not much of a reason." "It's actually a very good reason." "Okay." He didn't push her. He didn't have to. Over the next 2 weeks, without being asked, Priya told him about Greg Matheson's drinking, which was not a problem exactly, but was also not nothing. She told him about the 2 board members Greg had been cultivating, a man named Rothwell and a woman named Betancourt, and which restaurants they preferred. She told him about a junior analyst on Greg's team named Mark, who was sharp and ambitious and profoundly underpaid, and who had started showing up to work in shoes that cost more than his monthly rent, which was a bad sign in a specific and familiar way. "Somebody's paying him," Caleb said. "Somebody's paying him." "Greg?" "Probably." "For what?" "That's the question." Caleb wrote Mark's name down in the drawer at home, next to Greg's, and he did not mention it to Elena, and he did not do anything with it, because doing something with it was not yet his job. Mia had 2 good weeks. 2 full weeks, 13 straight days, with no fever and no cough, and no notes home from the school nurse. And on the 13th day, Caleb made her pancakes for breakfast, and she said, with her mouth full, "Daddy, I think I'm done being sick." "Yeah?" "Yeah, I decided." "You decided?" "Yeah." "Can you just do that?" "I don't know. We'll see." He laughed. He laughed harder than the moment asked for, and she looked at him with her mouth still full and a small vertical line between her eyebrows, and she said, "What?" "Nothing, sweetheart. I just love you." "Okay." She went back to her pancakes. That afternoon, Lillian texted him. Not a call. A text. "Can I have her for Thanksgiving?" He read it 3 times. He set the phone down. He picked it back up. He typed, "I'll ask her. Thank you. Lillian, yes. This is twice in 6 weeks." "I know. What's happening?" The reply didn't come for a long time, long enough that he put the phone down and went and started a load of laundry and came back and checked it, and there was nothing. And he started the dishwasher and came back and checked it again, and there was still nothing.
It came an hour later.
Nothing is happening. I'm just tired of being the reason my daughter's wary of me. I can't undo any of it. I know that. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to be in the room because being in the room is the only thing I can still do. He read it twice. He didn't reply right away. He made himself a sandwich. He ate it standing at the counter. He thought about the version of Lillian who had stood in their kitchen in 2018 and explained to him, patiently, why his fear of losing her wasn't a good enough reason for her to stay. He thought about the version of Lillian who had knelt in his hallway 2 weeks ago and told Mia she missed her. He thought about the version of himself who had, for about 6 months after the divorce, practiced saying cruel things to her in the shower, full speeches, rehearsed in the steam, that he had never delivered and was never going to deliver. He typed, "I'll ask Mia. If she wants to, you can have her from Wednesday night through Friday morning. If she doesn't want to, you can't." "Okay, I mean it. I know you mean it. Okay." He set the phone down. He asked Mia that night while they were brushing their teeth because she answered harder questions better when she had something to do with her hands. "Bug, Mom wants to have you for Thanksgiving, Wednesday night to Friday morning. What do you think?" She spit, she rinsed.
"Will Aunt Ruthie be there?"
"I don't know. Probably." "Will there be pie?"
"Probably." "Will Mom cry?" He paused. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe." "Would that be okay?" "If she cries quiet, yes. If she cries loud, no." "Okay." "Can I think about it until tomorrow?" "Yes." She rinsed again. "Daddy." "Yeah. I think I'm going to say yes." "Okay. But I'm going to think about it until tomorrow anyway." "Okay, Bug."
She said yes the next morning. He texted Lillian. Lillian did not reply for 6 hours, and when she did, she just wrote thank you, with no period. And he understood, in a way he couldn't quite articulate, that the missing period meant she had been crying when she wrote it. He filed that too. The gala of the season was in the middle of November. It was the same foundation that had hosted the night he had met Elena in the champagne-colored dress, and the same ballroom, and, according to the list Priya showed him on her screen one afternoon with a raised eyebrow, the same crowd. "You're on the list," she said. "I'm not." "You are." "Elena said she wasn't going to bring me to these anymore." "Elena didn't put you on the list." "Who did?" Priya turned her screen around so he could see it. The name on the invitation trail was Greg Matheson. Caleb leaned back in his chair. "Huh. Yeah. He knows I'm not going to come. He knows you have to come. If you don't come, he gets to tell people you didn't come. That's the whole move. The invitation is the move. So I come. You come. And then what? And then you stand next to Elena, and you let him see you stand next to Elena, and you don't do anything. Just be there. Be seen. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing." He thought about it. "Priya." "Yeah." "Why are you telling me this?" She shrugged, a small, tired shrug. "Because I've been watching Elena build this firm for 4 years. And I've been watching Greg spend the last 18 months trying to take it from her. And I've decided I don't want to work for Greg. That's not a reason to help me." "No, it's a reason to help her. You're just the closest thing to her that will actually talk to me. That's honest." "Yeah. I appreciate honest. I figured you would." He signed up for the gala. He did not tell Elena. He did tell Joyce, who agreed to stay late. He did not tell Lillian because there was no reason in the world to tell Lillian, and because Lillian would almost certainly be there anyway, which was part of what made the whole thing feel like a trap with his name on it. He was right about that. She was there. The night of the gala was colder than the first one. He wore a different tuxedo this time because he had finally bought one rather than renting, a decision that had felt ridiculous when he made it, and standing in the coat check line at the venue felt less ridiculous now. He had also replaced the stolen cufflinks. They were plain, no monogram, his own. The room looked the same. The quartet was the same. The champagne was the same. The crowd had shuffled a little. Different senators, a different hospital executive, but the shape of it was identical, and Caleb moved into it the way a man moves into cold water, a half step at a time, testing. He saw Lillian before she saw him. She was standing near the east wall in a deep green dress this time, talking to 2 men he didn't recognize. She was laughing. She didn't laugh at things that weren't genuinely funny, which was the thing people who didn't know her got wrong about her. They thought she laughed strategically. She didn't. She laughed only when something actually struck her, and then she laughed with her whole face, and it was one of the things about her that had made him fall in love with her in the first place, 1,000 years ago, and it was one of the things that still, irritatingly, made her human in a room full of people who were only pretending. He didn't approach her. He walked a long, slow circuit of the room, and he found Elena near the bar, holding a glass of seltzer, in a black dress tonight, her hair down for the third time since he had known her. "You're here," she said. "I'm here. I didn't put you on the list this time." "I know, Greg did." Her face didn't move. "Ah. Yeah. When?" "Last week, Priya showed me." "You didn't tell me." "I'm telling you now." "Caleb, I didn't want you to handle it. I wanted to see what he was going to do." She looked at him for a long second. He could feel her deciding whether to be angry with him. He could feel her deciding not to be. "Okay," she said. "Okay. You see him yet?" "No." "He's in the corner by the fountain. He's with Rothwell and Betancourt. He's been with them for the last 40 minutes. That's not great." "It's not great." She sipped her seltzer. "Caleb." "Yeah." "What do you think he's going to do?" "I think he's going to wait until the crowd thickens, and then he's going to walk over to wherever you and I are standing, and he's going to ask me a question in front of a group of people. Something about the firm. Something that either makes me sound like I know things I shouldn't know, or makes me sound like I don't know things I should know. He's going to set a trap, and he's going to put me in it. You're going to be standing next to me when he does." That's a very specific prediction. "I've had 3 weeks to think about it." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." "Caleb." "Elena." "If he puts you on the spot, I can step in." "Don't." "Why not?" "Because if you step in, you confirm everything he's been saying about you to the board. You confirm that you protect me, that I'm your pet, that the firm is being run on personal loyalty instead of performance. If he sets the trap and you spring it for me, he wins without even having me in it. The trap isn't for me. It's for you. I'm just the bait." She looked at him. "You figured that out yourself?" "Yeah." "Okay. Okay." She set her seltzer down on the bar. "Caleb?" "Yeah. I'm going to step away. I'm going to go talk to the foundation president for about 15 minutes. I want him to see me do that. I want the room to see me not hovering near you. When Greg makes his move, he's going to do it when I'm visibly across the room. That's what he's waiting for." "I know. You're sure about this?" "No." "Okay." She walked away. He watched her walk. He saw Greg, in the corner by the fountain, register her leaving. Greg did not look at him. Greg kept talking to Rothwell and Betancourt, but something in his posture changed, a tiny lifting, and Caleb felt a cold, small knowledge in his chest that was almost satisfying. "There you are." He was standing alone by the bar when Lillian found him. "Caleb," he turned. "Lillian." She was closer than he expected. She smelled the same. He hated that she smelled the same. She was holding a glass of something dark. "You came back." "I came back." "With a tuxedo that fits this time." "You noticed." "I notice everything." "Yeah, you do." She looked at him. He looked at her. A woman passed between them with a tray of tiny food, and neither of them took any. "I saw you come in," she said. "I saw you laughing." "I was." "What was funny?" "A very stupid joke about a senator." "Oh." "Caleb." "Yeah." "I want to say something to you, and I don't want to fight about it." "Okay." "I was wrong about you." He didn't speak. "I was wrong about you," she said again. "For a long time. I was wrong when I left, and I was wrong at the gala 6 weeks ago, and I've been wrong in 100 quiet ways since, and I'm not going to list all of them because I would run out of night. But I was wrong." "Okay." That's all I wanted to say. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not trying to. I just wanted you to hear it in a room with other people in it, so you'd know it wasn't rehearsed and it wasn't a strategy. It's just what's true." He looked at her. He said the only thing he could figure out how to say. "Okay," he said. "Thank you." "Yeah." Lillian. Yeah. It doesn't. That doesn't fix anything. I know. It doesn't undo it. I know, Caleb. Okay. Okay. She took one step back. She nodded. Once. She walked away. He watched her go. His hand was around a glass he didn't remember picking up. He set it down. Across the room, the quartet had shifted into something he half recognized. Somewhere behind him, a woman was laughing at something, and it wasn't a real laugh. Elena was across the room with the foundation president, nodding at something he was saying, and she did not look at Caleb, and he knew, in a way he could not have articulated, that she had seen the entire conversation with Lillian and had chosen not to interrupt it and was now making herself invisible on purpose. And that was when Greg Matheson came around the fountain. He came with Rothwell on one side and Betancourt on the other, and a fourth person Caleb didn't recognize on the edge. A woman in her 40s with a notepad, a foundation employee of some kind, the kind of person who was there to remember things so that other people didn't have to. The presence of the notepad was not an accident. Caleb saw the notepad and his stomach went cool. Hayes. Greg. I want you to meet Harold Rothwell and Amelia Betancourt. They're on our board. It's a pleasure. Caleb Hayes, Rothwell said. Harold Rothwell was 72, narrow, gray, with the kind of handshake that had been developed over decades of pretending to be weaker than he was. Greg tells me you've been doing some interesting work for us. Greg is kind. Greg is many things. Kind is rarely on the list. A small laugh went around the circle. Greg smiled without his eyes. Betancourt did not smile at all. She was in her late 50s, silver blonde, in a pale gray dress that had cost more than Caleb's car. She was studying him like she was buying him. Greg says, Rothwell went on, that you were the one who flagged the logistics deal, the one we passed on. I was one of the people who flagged it. He says you were the one. Greg is generous with credit. Greg is never generous with credit. Another small laugh. So you were the one, Rothwell said. I wrote the memo. Someone else's name was on it. Why? Because I'm a consultant, and there are 4 analysts on Elena's team who should have been the one catching it, and one of them deserved the write-up more than I did. That's unusual. It shouldn't be. Rothwell tilted his head, considered him. Betancourt still had not spoken. Greg, at the edge of the circle, was watching Caleb with the small eyes, waiting for the next question, because the next question was the one he had fed Rothwell. Caleb could feel it coming. Mr. Hayes, Rothwell said, since you're being candid, let me ask you a candid question. Okay. Do you think Elena Voss is running this firm well? There it was. The room around them kept moving. The quartet kept playing. A server with a tray of something small and cold passed behind Betancourt. Greg Matheson did not blink. Caleb took one breath. He thought for about a second about what Elena had said to him in the office 6 weeks ago. If anyone in this building asks you a question about that memo, or about me, or about how I run my team, I want you to tell them exactly what you actually think, not what's flattering to me, not what's careful. The truth. He thought about Greg asking him, at the window on the 18th floor, if he would take a job at half the salary for the chance to get his name in the trade press. He thought about Priya's map, and Mark's expensive shoes, and the whole architecture of pressure that Greg had been building around Elena for 18 months. And he thought about the fact that Greg had picked this moment, in this room, with this notepad in attendance, to corner a consultant, not an employee, not a director, not someone with anything to lose, and ask him a question that was designed to have only one useful answer. Caleb answered the question. Mr. Rothwell, he said, I'm going to answer you, but I want to tell you something first because I think it matters. Go ahead. The only reason this is a question worth asking is because Greg has spent the last 18 months convincing you it's a question worth asking. If he hadn't been in your ear about it, you would not be standing here at a charity gala asking a consultant who has been at the firm for 3.5 months and who, until this conversation, has never met you before in his life, whether or not your CEO is any good at her job. Rothwell didn't move. Go on, he said. The second thing I want to say is that Greg is not wrong that the firm is being run cautiously. He's right about that. What he's wrong about is whether caution is costing you money. The deal I flagged, the one you passed on, one of your competitors picked it up 6 weeks ago. I've been watching it. The warranty reserve I told Elena about, which was the reason we walked. Their first quarter under the new ownership, they had to take a write-down that knocked 8% off the company's book value. Nobody in the trade press has connected it to the acquisition yet. In 3 months, they will. When they do, Elena is going to look like the only person in the room who was paying attention. Greg is going to have a much harder conversation with you in March than he thinks he's going to have. Rothwell looked at Greg. Greg's face had done something. The third thing, Caleb said, is that I don't care who runs this firm. I don't work for this firm. I'm a consultant. The contract I signed 4 months ago is up in 6 weeks. Whether I renew it is a question I haven't decided, and I'm going to decide it based on a lot of things, and which one of you is winning a political fight is not on the list. So my answer to your question is both useless to you and completely honest, and it's this. Yes. Elena Voss is running this firm well. She's running it well in the sense that matters, which is that the decisions she makes in January look smart in June. Greg's decisions look smart in January, and I have no idea how they look in June, because he has not made enough of them in this firm to have a track record you can measure. That's not an insult. It's the answer to the question you asked. Nobody spoke. Betancourt finally moved. She picked up a flute of champagne from a passing tray, and she held it without drinking from it, and she looked at Caleb, and she said very quietly, "Mr. Hayes." "Yes." "How old are you?" 32. "How long have you been doing this?" "This specifically, 3.5 months. Work like this, in general, about 9 years." "For whom?" "Municipal authorities, mostly. I used to do infrastructure. Power grids, water systems, distribution networks." "Why did you stop?" "I didn't stop. I'm doing it now." The thing you buy when you buy a logistics company is a distribution network. The difference between a distribution network that works and a distribution network that doesn't is the same difference whether it's trucks or electricity. Betancourt looked at Rothwell. Rothwell looked at Greg. Greg, for the first time since Caleb had met him, was not rocking on his heels. "Greg," Rothwell said. His voice was different now, dry. "I think we should finish this conversation another time." "Harold." "Another time, Greg." Greg smiled. It was a bad smile. "Of course," he said. Rothwell turned back to Caleb. He extended his hand. The handshake was still the deliberate weak one, but there was something else in it now, a small pressure, not quite a grip. "Mr. Hayes, I appreciate your candor. I appreciate the question. I hope we'll see more of you at the firm." "I hope so too." Rothwell nodded. Betancourt nodded. They moved away. The foundation employee with the notepad moved away with them, and Caleb did not see her write anything down, but he understood that she had not needed to, because people who carry notepads are people whose job is to remember, and people whose job is to remember do not forget the interesting parts. Greg stayed. For a moment it was just the two of them near the bar, with the quartet playing something slow behind them, and Greg Matheson looked at Caleb Hayes the way a man looks at a thing that has just come loose in a way he did not anticipate. "That was a mistake, Hayes." "Probably." "You don't even know." "I don't." "You just burned a bridge for a woman who is going to walk away from you the second it stops being useful to her." "Maybe. You'll see." "Okay." Hayes. "Yeah, you were supposed to be smart." "I am. Not tonight. We'll see." Greg walked away. Caleb stood at the bar with his hands in his pockets, and he breathed for about 15 seconds, and across the room Elena was turning, slowly, from her conversation with the foundation president, and her eyes found him, and she did not smile, and she did not move toward him, and she stayed exactly where she was. And in the way she did not move toward him, Caleb understood that she had watched the whole thing from across the room, the exact angle of the quartet, the exact position of the bar, and that she had known what was happening, and that she had trusted him to handle it. He walked to the coat check. He got his coat. He went outside. The valet brought his car around in under 2 minutes. He tipped the valet. He got in. He sat at the wheel for a moment, in the cold, with the engine running, his hands resting on the wheel and not shaking. Not this time. His phone buzzed. He looked at it. That was expensive, Caleb. He thought about that for a second. He typed, "Worth it?" The reply came back, "Ask me in March."
He drove home. Mia was asleep when he got in. Joyce was reading a mystery novel at the kitchen table. She raised her eyebrows at him. He shook his head. She put her book down. That bad? That good? I think. You think. Yeah. Well, she said, congratulations, I guess. Yeah. He paid her. She went home. He went to Mia's room and stood in the doorway for a minute listening to her breathe, and then he went to the kitchen and he made himself a sandwich. He actually ate this time, and he stood at the counter and he ate the whole thing in about 4 minutes, and he was halfway through a glass of water when his phone buzzed again. It wasn't Elena. It was the sitter at Lillian's building. It was 2 short words, call Lillian. He put the water down. He picked up the phone and he called. Lillian answered on the second ring, and her voice was the voice he had not heard in 7 years, the voice from 2018, and she said, before he could say anything at all, Caleb, it's Mia. The school called me by mistake. She collapsed at recess this afternoon. She's at St. Vincent's. I'm already on my way. Where are you? He was at the door before she finished the sentence. He was in the car before she finished the second one. He did not call Elena. He did not text her. He did not do anything but drive, and in the 22 minutes it took him to reach the hospital, he went through every color in the notebook on top of his refrigerator, red for fever, blue for stomach, green for cough, and none of them fit because collapsed at recess had never been one of the colors, and collapsed at recess was something new, and collapsed at recess was, he understood with a clarity so sudden it felt like cold water. The thing he had been afraid of for 2 years without being able to name. He drove. St. Vincent's was on the north side of the city, and at that hour on a weeknight the streets were clear enough that he made the drive in 22 minutes, which was 5 minutes faster than the navigation said it would be. He parked in the emergency lot in a space that was probably not legal, and he did not care, and he walked through the automatic doors into the specific smell of hospital air, the industrial soap, the warm plastic, the undernote of something metallic, and he went straight to the desk. Mia Hayes, are you family? I'm her father. ID, please. He fumbled his wallet. He got the license out. The woman behind the desk typed something and looked at her screen for longer than he wanted her to, and then she said, she's in pediatric 4th floor, room 11. The elevator is to your left. Is her mother here? I can't tell you that, sir. Right. He walked to the elevator. He pressed 4. The car was empty. In the mirrored wall, he looked at a man in a tuxedo he had bought the week before, with a coat he had thrown on inside out in his rush out the door, and he thought you look ridiculous. And then he stopped looking because looking didn't help, and the tuxedo wasn't the point. Lillian was in the hallway outside room 11. She was standing with her back to the wall and her hands over her face, and when she heard his footsteps, she took her hands down and her eyes were red and her makeup was gone from under them in a way that meant she had scrubbed it off in a bathroom somewhere, which Lillian had never done in her life. And he understood in the half second before she spoke that whatever was happening behind the door was real. Caleb, what is it? They don't know yet. They're running things. She's conscious. She was conscious when the ambulance got there. She's been in and out since they brought her up. In and out. They think it might be a seizure. They think it might not. The doctor said we'd know more in an hour, and that was 40 minutes ago, and nobody has been out here since. Okay. Caleb. What? She was crying. She was not crying the Lillian way, which was the one small tear and the chin up. She was crying like a person cries in a hallway, with her shoulders shaking once and then again, and she was not trying to hide it, and she was not trying to make it smaller. I was already in this cab when the school called, she said. I was coming from the gala. I was in the cab going home. And the school called my number because I'm the second number on the emergency form, and they tried yours twice and you were driving, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to tell them. I said I was coming. I said I was her mother. You are her mother. I haven't been. Lillian. I haven't been, Caleb. Not tonight. Tonight you are. Stop. She nodded. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, and she looked very young for a second. Younger than 34, younger than she had looked since she was 23, and he had known her before she was anyone. The door of room 11 opened. A woman in pale blue scrubs came out. She was young, 30s maybe,
And she did not look tired the way the ER doctor had looked the month before. She looked focused, which was worse. She looked at Caleb. "Mr. Hayes?" "Yes." "I'm Dr. Aroga. I'm the pediatric neurologist on call tonight. Can we step in here for a minute, all three of us?" She meant the small room across the hall, the one with the 2 chairs and the box of tissues on the low table. He had been in rooms like that before. Every parent who had ever been in a hospital for more than 2 hours had been in rooms like that before. He said, "Is she okay right now?" "She's stable. She's sleeping. Her vitals are good." "Then tell me in the hall." "Mr. Hayes, please." Dr. Aroga looked at him, and she looked at Lillian, and something in her face adjusted, and she said, "All right, short version. She had a seizure at recess. From what the school described, it was probably about 90 seconds. She came out of it on her own before the ambulance arrived. Since she's been here, she's had 2 smaller episodes, which we've captured on the monitor, and that is actually good news because it means we can see what's happening. What we're looking at, and I want to be careful here because we are still early, is a pattern that is consistent with a condition called focal epilepsy. It's treatable. It's manageable. It is not, in most cases, progressive. But before we say anything more than that, we need to run an MRI, and we need the results of the blood work that went out an hour ago. Both of those things are going to take until morning. Morning? Yes. Okay. Mr. Hayes? Yes. If this is what we think it is, you're going to be in this hospital through tomorrow afternoon, possibly Tuesday morning. I want to tell you that now so you can make the calls you need to make. Okay. Ms. Drake? Yes. Will you be staying? Lillian looked at Caleb. He looked at her. Yes, he said before she could. She's staying. Lillian's face did a thing. He couldn't read it. He was not going to try to. All right, Dr. Aroga said. You can go in. 1 at a time is easier for her if she wakes up. Keep it quiet. She went back to the nurse's station. Caleb pushed open the door of room 11. Mia was small on the bed. She had always been small. She was small for 7, small for her grade, small in the way her mother was small, and the way her grandmother had been small, but in the hospital bed under the thin white blanket, with the sensors taped to her chest and a soft line running into the back of her left hand, she looked like the version of herself that lived inside him when he was afraid. The version he tried not to look at. The version that reminded him she was a body and the body was on loan. He sat down in the chair next to the bed. He did not take her hand because the hand had the line in it, and he did not want to move it. He put his fingers very lightly on her forearm above the tape, and he felt the warmth of her, and he sat like that, and he breathed. She opened her eyes once. "Daddy." "I'm here, Bug." "My head." "I know." "Is Mom here?" "Yeah, Bug. She's in the hallway." "Can she come in?" "In a minute." "Okay." She closed her eyes. Her breathing evened out. He sat with his fingers on her arm, and he did not move. He stayed like that for maybe 10 minutes. Then he stood up, very quietly, and he went to the hallway. And Lillian was on the floor now, her back against the wall, her legs out in front of her in the green dress, her heels next to her on the tile. She looked up. "Is she?" "She asked for you." Lillian's face broke. "She asked for me." "Yeah. Go, she's sleeping. Just sit with her." Lillian stood. She picked up her heels in one hand but didn't put them on. She went into the room in her bare feet, and the door closed behind her very quietly. And Caleb slid down the wall onto the tile, in his tuxedo, and he put his face in his hands for about 30 seconds, and he did not cry, because crying was a thing he did in the car when he was alone. Not in hallways, but he came close enough to crying that it felt almost the same. Then he took his phone out. He looked at it. There were no messages from Elena. That was almost a relief. It meant she had understood, from the way he had left, that she was not who he needed tonight. It meant she had not been checking. He typed anyway. "Mia is at St. Vincent's. She had a seizure at school this afternoon. They think it's focal epilepsy, pending test tomorrow. I'm not going to be in this week." He hit send. He almost put the phone back in his pocket. Then he didn't. He watched the 3 little dots appear and disappear and appear again. The reply was 1 line. "What do you need?" He stared at it. He typed, "Nothing right now. I'll tell you if that changes." The reply came in under 10 seconds. "Okay, don't worry about the firm. It doesn't exist this week." He put the phone away. He sat on the tile for a while longer. A nurse walked by, glanced at him, did not comment. A man in scrubs pushed a cart past. The hallway light overhead was humming in a way that should not have been soothing and somehow was. He thought, without really meaning to, about Greg Matheson. About the way Greg had smiled at the bar, and the way Greg had said you just burned a bridge for a woman who is going to walk away from you the second it stops being useful to her. He thought about the exact construction of that sentence, the assumption underneath it, the assumption that Elena Voss was, for Caleb Hayes, a career decision, and that her texts at 11 o'clock at night were part of the negotiation. Greg had said it in a way that meant he had seen 1,000 men get burned exactly like that, and he had not been wrong about those men. But Greg did not know that Caleb was sitting on the floor of a pediatric hallway, in a tuxedo, with his phone in his pocket. Greg did not know that the message in the pocket said, "Don't worry about the firm. It doesn't exist this week." Greg did not know that the woman who had sent that message had watched him across a ballroom 40 minutes earlier and had understood, without being told, to stay where she was. There were a lot of things Greg did not know. Lillian came out of the room about 20 minutes later. She sat down on the floor next to Caleb without asking. She didn't say anything for a while. The heels were on the tile next to her bare feet, and her green dress was wrinkled under her, and she had her arms wrapped around her knees like a teenager. "She's asleep." "Okay." She held my hand. "Okay." "Caleb." "Yeah. I'm sorry." "For what?" For not being her emergency number, for being the second one, for the school having to call twice before anyone could get here. For all of it. For Lillian. What? Stop. Okay. Not tonight. Okay. Tonight, you are her mother and I am her father, and she is in that room and the rest of it doesn't matter. Tomorrow we can fight. Tonight we can't afford to. She put her head down on her knees. "Okay," she said. They sat like that. After a while, she said, "Who were you texting?" "Elena." "I thought so." "It wasn't what you think." "It wasn't any of my business." "No, it wasn't." She laughed, once, a short, wet laugh, still into her knees. "Caleb." "What?" "She was watching you tonight, the whole time." "I know." "She's in love with you." "Lillian." "She is. I could see it. It's not my place to tell you, but I could see it from across the room, and I've known what you look like when a woman is looking at you for a long time, and I'm telling you because I don't want you to be the last person in the building to know." He didn't answer. Lillian lifted her head. "I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because if it's real, you should let it be real. You should not do the thing you always did with me, where you hold yourself just slightly outside of the room. You were always doing that. With me, with everyone. You were always standing in the doorway deciding if you were allowed to come in. I don't want you to do that anymore." "Lillian." "Yeah. You don't get to give me advice about this." "I know." "You really don't." "I know, Caleb." "Okay. But I'm doing it anyway." "I noticed." She laughed again. Wet again, shorter this time. "Our daughter is going to be fine," she said. "Say it back." "Our daughter is going to be fine." Again. "Our daughter is going to be fine." "Okay." They sat on the floor of the hallway for another hour. Around 1 in the morning, a nurse came by with 2 pillows and 2 thin hospital blankets, and she said, very quietly, "There's a family room down the hall if you'd rather, but I figured you weren't moving." "We're not moving." "Okay." She left the pillows. She left the blankets. Lillian took one of each and curled against the opposite wall with her heels under her head and the blanket across her shoulders. And Caleb sat with the other one draped over his knees. And he did not sleep. And he watched the door of room 11. And whenever a nurse went in or came out, he made himself count silently to 60 before he let his heart slow back down. Elena came at 6 in the morning. He didn't hear her. He felt her before he saw her. The shift in the air of the hallway, the small change in the way the overhead lights sat on things. He looked up. She was at the end of the corridor in jeans and a wool coat and no makeup, and her hair was down and she was holding 2 paper cups of coffee and a small paper bag. He stood up. Lillian was still asleep against the opposite wall. Elena crossed the hall without a sound. She held out one of the cups. She said, "I'm not staying. I just wanted to bring you this. And to see your face."
Elena. I know. I told you nothing. I know. Why are you here? She looked at him. She looked for a second at Lillian asleep against the wall, and her face did not change. Because you said thank you in a text at 11 o'clock at night, she said. And people who are actually fine don't say thank you in text messages at 11 o'clock at night. He took the coffee. His hand shook when he took it. He had not noticed his hand shaking before. He had not, in fact, noticed anything about his body for about 7 hours. He held the cup in both hands, and he looked down at the lid of it. She had a seizure at school. I know, you told me. No, I mean, she had a seizure. My kid had a seizure at recess. They found her. Caleb, yeah. Drink the coffee. He drank it. It was hot, and it was good. And it was exactly the kind of coffee Elena would bring, which was to say the kind from a specific place 2 blocks from her apartment that did not have a chain and did not have a sign and only had 1 employee, and he had never been there, and she had gone there at 5:30 in the morning to get him a cup of coffee, and he understood that without her saying it. He drank half of it in one pull. Is she? Elena started. They don't know yet. Focal epilepsy, probably. MRI this morning. Blood work. They said by afternoon we'd have a plan. A plan is good. Yeah. Caleb? Yeah. You're not coming back to work this week. I know. I mean it. Not Wednesday, not Thursday, not a Zoom, nothing. Okay? Greg is going to try to make something of it. Let him. I don't care. Elena. I don't care. I mean it. If he wants to tell the board you abandoned the firm in a crisis, he can tell them that. And I will get up in that meeting and I will tell them exactly why you weren't there. And I will dare any one of them to tell me to my face that they would have done it differently. Rothwell won't. Betancourt won't. I don't think even Greg will, because even Greg knows where the line is. Okay? I'm not being kind. I'm telling you what's true. I know. Drink the coffee. I am. She looked at him for another moment, and then she said, I'm going to leave now. I don't want to be here when she wakes up. This is not my morning. Okay. Caleb? Yeah. If you need anything, at any hour, you call me. You don't text, you call. I will pick up. I don't care what I'm doing. Okay. Say it. I'll call. Okay. She turned to go. She stopped. She turned back. She's going to be all right, Elena said. I'm not a person who knows things like that. I'm a person who makes decisions based on data. But I'm telling you anyway, she's going to be all right. And if she isn't, I'll be here for the parts that aren't all right too. I'm telling you that so you don't have to wonder. Elena. I'm going. She went. He stood in the hallway with the coffee in his hands, and he watched her walk to the elevator, and she did not look back. And the doors closed, and he stood there a few seconds longer, and then he sat back down on the floor. Across the hallway, Lillian opened one eye. Was that her? Yeah. She brought coffee. Yeah. At 6 a.m? Yeah. Lillian closed her eye again. Caleb. What? She's better at it than I was. At what? At showing up. He did not answer. He did not have to. The MRI came back at 11. The blood work came back at 1. Dr. Aroga sat down with them in the small room across the hall, the one with the 2 chairs and the box of tissues, and she said it was focal epilepsy, almost certainly, the good kind, the kind that responded to medication and that most children either grew out of in adolescence or learned to manage so completely that it stopped being a meaningful part of their lives. She said there would be a daily pill. She said there would be a specialist. She said there would be 3 months of watching closely before they could be sure the medication was working, and that during those 3 months Mia would need to be kept from certain things, swimming alone, climbing high things, the specific trampoline park at the mall, and that after those 3 months most of that would loosen, and that in a year most children with this pattern were living lives that were indistinguishable from their peers. Caleb listened. Lillian, next to him, listened. When Dr. Aroga finished, Caleb said, "What do I do?" "You take her home, you give her the medication, you call my office if anything changes, and you let her be a kid. That last part is the hard part, Mr. Hayes. Parents want to put them in a bubble. Please don't." "Okay. It's going to be fine." "Okay." "Mr. Hayes." "Yes."
You don't have to say okay to me. You can say anything. He looked down at his hands. He was still in the tuxedo. The jacket was wrinkled. The cufflinks were his. Okay, he said. I heard you. Thank you. Dr. Aroga smiled. She stood up. She left the room. Lillian and Caleb sat in the two chairs for another minute. Neither of them spoke. Then Lillian put her hand over his on the arm of his chair, very lightly, and she said, I'm going to go home and shower, and I'm going to come back here with clean clothes for her, and then I'm going to go home again. And I'm going to do that every day until she's out of this hospital. Is that okay? Yes. And then I'm going to ask you if I can see her more. Not to fight, not to win anything, just to see her more. Yes. I'm not going to make it a thing. I know. Okay. She squeezed his hand once and let go. She stood up. She picked up her heels from where they had been on the floor next to her chair for the last 14 hours, and she walked out of the room in her bare feet. He stayed. He sat in the chair for another minute or two. Then he stood up and he went to room 11, and Mia was awake, sitting up a little, looking at a small paper cup of apple juice with the suspicion she reserved for food she had not personally approved. She saw him. She smiled. Daddy. Hi, Bug. The nurse said I can go home tomorrow. Yeah, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. Can I not go to school for a while? For a little while. Good. She took a sip of the apple juice. She made a face. Daddy. Yeah. Did you sleep in the hallway? A little. In your tux? Yeah. That's dumb. Yeah. Daddy? Yeah. Mom slept in the hallway, too. Yeah, Bug. She did. Mia nodded once, the same serious auditor's nod she had given him the night she had walked around the paper on the living room floor. Good, she said. He sat down in the chair next to the bed. He did not take her hand. He put his fingers very lightly on her forearm the way he had the night before. She let him. She went back to her apple juice. Outside the window of room 11, the sun had come up on the city, and Caleb Hayes, 32 years old, in a wrinkled tuxedo, in a chair next to his daughter's hospital bed, understood something he had not understood before the seizure, which was that the size of a life was not the same thing as the size of the thing you were trying to protect inside it. He had spent 6 years measuring his life against rooms he was not in. He had spent 3 months standing at the edge of a ballroom he had no particular reason to enter. He had spent a whole long night on the tile floor of a pediatric hallway with his ex-wife crying into her knees across from him. And at some point during that night, the noise in his head had gone quiet, and he had not noticed it going, and it had not come back. Mia finished the apple juice. She held out the empty cup to him. More, please. Yeah, Bug. He took the cup. He went to find her more juice. The juice run took longer than it should have. He went to the nurse's station, got pointed to a small kitchenette, poured apple juice into a fresh paper cup, and stood for a minute with his hand on the counter, breathing, because standing still was sometimes the hardest thing a body could do after a long night on a floor. When he got back, Mia had fallen asleep with the empty cup still in her hand. He took it. He sat down. 4 days later, they went home. The specialist's office called on a Monday morning with the first medication plan. The school called on a Tuesday, and a woman named Mrs. Okafor, who had been Mia's first-grade teacher and whose face Caleb had, until that phone call, mostly known as the person at drop-off who smiled at kids' shoes, cried a little on the phone and said the whole school had been asking about her. Mia, watching a cartoon on the couch with her chin on her fist, listened to one side of the call without turning her head and said, when it was over, "Tell her I said Jonah in my class told everyone I died. Tell her to tell him I didn't. Bis." Okay, Bug, tell her with the exact words. I will. Elena came by on the Saturday. She came in jeans. She brought soup. She stayed for 40 minutes, and she sat on the floor with Mia and a tub of plastic dinosaurs and had a completely serious conversation about which dinosaur was in charge of the weather. And when Mia ruled that the small blue one had to retire because she had been the weather dinosaur for too long, Elena accepted the ruling without argument and put the small blue dinosaur in a matchbox and said she would write her a letter of recommendation. Mia thought about this for a long moment and said, "Okay, but use good paper." Elena used good paper. Caleb watched them from the kitchen doorway with a dish towel over his shoulder, and he did not say anything because the moment did not need him in it. When Elena stood up to go, Mia said without looking up. You should come back. I will. On Tuesday. Tuesdays are hard for me, Bug. Wednesday. Wednesday. Okay. At the door, Elena pulled her coat on and looked at him and said quietly, I'm going to tell you something, and you're not allowed to answer me until next week. Okay? The director role. I want to change it. I don't want you 2 or 3 days a week in the building. I want you 1 day. Whichever day works. The rest, you're wherever you need to be. I want you on the calls that matter and off the ones that don't, and I want you to tell me which is which. If Greg tries to make something of it in March, I'll handle Greg. That's my job, not yours. I'm restructuring the role around your life because I don't want the role to exist without you in it. That's the whole offer. Don't answer me now. Hot? Elena. Next week. Okay. She opened the door. Also, she said, there's soup. She left. He took the whole week. He took longer than the week. He thought about it at the kitchen table after Mia was asleep, and he thought about it in the car on the way to the specialist's office. And he thought about it one afternoon standing in the laundry room listening to the dryer. And by the end of it, the thing he kept coming back to was not the salary, or the title, or even the hours. It was a sentence Elena had said to him the first morning in her office, months ago, that he had not understood at the time. Systems fail in the direction of the people who are already tired. He had said it first in that conference room, but she had handed it back to him bigger. And what he understood now, standing in the laundry room, was that his own life had been failing in that direction for a long time, quietly, not in any way a stranger would have seen, and that the cost of fixing it was not money and not recognition. The cost was letting someone else build a system that assumed he was allowed to be tired. He said yes on a Tuesday. He said yes in her office at 8 in the morning, with the door closed, and she did not smile when he said it. She just nodded, once, and said, Okay, good. I'll redraw the paperwork this week. Elena, yeah. Thank you. Don't thank me for it. It's not a favor. It's a structure. Favors expire. Structures don't. He remembered that line. He wrote it down later on a piece of paper, and he put it in the drawer at home where he kept the other pieces of paper he didn't throw away. The board meeting in March came and went. Greg brought his numbers. Elena brought hers. Rothwell asked 3 careful questions, and Betancourt asked 1 very sharp one. And the first quarter write-down at the competitor firm had happened 2 weeks earlier, right on schedule. And by the end of the meeting, Greg's argument had the particular smell of an argument whose timing had passed. He stayed at the firm. He had to. But something in the building shifted after that meeting, and Priya, eating lunch at Caleb's desk the following week, said only, He's quieter now. And Caleb said, Good. And neither of them said anything else about it. Lillian took Mia 2 Saturdays a month. Then 3. She stopped canceling. She was not suddenly good at it. She missed a bedtime in June. She forgot a dentist appointment in August. She said the wrong thing to Mia in October about a boy at school and had to call Caleb to apologize, which she did, without being asked, without qualification. But she was in the room, and she stayed in the room, and Mia stopped bracing when the buzzer rang, which was the only measure that mattered. The seizures got smaller, then rarer. By the following spring, Mia had gone 4 months without one, and the specialist used the word excellent twice in a single appointment, and on the drive home, Mia, in the back seat, said, Daddy, when I'm older, can I have a dog? Maybe, Bug. A big one. We'll see. A medium one. We'll see. Okay.
Elena moved slowly. So did he. They did not announce anything. They did not have to. She started coming for dinner on Sundays, and then on Sundays and Wednesdays, and then Mia asked, one Wednesday night, with a full mouth, Elena, are you my dad's girlfriend? And Elena set her fork down and said, I think I'm your dad's person. Is that okay? And Mia, the tiny auditor, chewed and swallowed and said, Yeah, that's okay, but you have to not be weird about it. And Elena said, Deal.
There was a night, much later, when Caleb stood in his kitchen with Elena beside him doing dishes neither of them particularly wanted to do, and he said, You know what the thing is? What's the thing? Lillian was right about one thing, exactly one. At the first gala, she said I thought dignity was the same as success, and I didn't. She was right that I thought they weren't the same. She was wrong about which one I was choosing. Elena handed him a plate. Which one were you choosing?
I was choosing my kid. I thought I was choosing dignity.
It wasn't. It was my kid.
Elena dried her hands.
Caleb. Yeah. Most people don't know what they were choosing until 10 years after they chose it. You figured it out a little faster, that's all.
Is that a compliment?
It's an observation. You take it however you want. He took it as a compliment. He did not tell her that. A year after the hospital, almost to the day, Mia turned 8. She had a party at the apartment with 6 kids from her class and 2 from the building, and Joyce came and Lillian came for an hour and then left without making it a thing. And Elena came in jeans and brought a very large cake from a bakery that was not the bakery Mia liked. And Mia informed her, with the full gravity of a person whose opinions had been consistently correct for 8 years, that the cake was nice, but Elena should ask next time. Elena said she would ask next time. Mia said okay. The cake was eaten anyway, down to the last piece, which Mia's friend Jonah, the same Jonah who had told the class she had died, and who had since, Mia reported, been downgraded from enemy to just a guy, took home in a napkin, after the kids left, after the wrapping paper was in a bag, after Mia had fallen asleep on the couch with a paper crown slipping off her head. Caleb stood in his own living room and looked at the scene he was standing in the middle of. The sleeping daughter, the half-full wine glass on the coffee table, the woman in jeans sitting cross-legged on his floor, stacking plastic dinosaurs in a line, because Mia had asked her to before she fell asleep. And he thought about the man who had stood at the edge of a ballroom in a rented tuxedo with another man's cufflinks, believing, in some quiet, humiliating part of himself, that the shape of a real life was something other than what he already had. He had been wrong about that. That was the part that stayed with him. Not the job, not the ex-wife's apology, not even the diagnosis. The thing that stayed with him was the smaller, more embarrassing truth that he had spent years being ashamed of a life he had built with his own hands, while some other version of himself, better dressed and more applauded, went on existing in his head as a reference point. And the work, in the end, was not beating that other version. The work was noticing he had invented him. The work was setting him down. Elena looked up from the dinosaurs. You're standing weird. I'm thinking. About what? Nothing. Liar. Yeah. Come sit. He came. He sat. The apartment was quiet. Mia turned her face into the couch cushion in her sleep. Somewhere outside, a car went by. Elena put her head on his shoulder, once, lightly, the way she did things. And she did not say anything else. And he did not say anything either, because some rooms did not require anything from the people in them except that they stay. He stayed. That was the life. He had almost missed it. He hadn't.